Hey everyone, so we're at Computex 2025, and I am with Der8auer. And Roman, last we met with you was actually at your factory, which is pretty cool. Now you have a bunch of stuff you're showing off for Thermal Grizzly. So the quick run through of it before we get into details is a Wireview update. He's got the Der bench table, water block. So this over here has a really interesting finish we'll be talking about with Joe from Thermal Grizzly. So we'll get into some of the manufacturing detail. The micro fins here are also pretty interesting, very tightly spaced together. And then a Rubik's Cube that doesn't spin, but I've already put in the request for Computex 2026, and I am assured that it will be done. Right? We've got a commitment. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Thermaltake TR100 Portable Mini ITX case. The TR100 case has a mesh ventilated front panel, heavily perforated side and top panels, and claims to support up to 280mm liquid coolers and large GPUs up to 360mm long and 70mm thick. It even has an optional suitcase with cutouts for the system, a mouse, keyboard, and monitor for transport. The Thermaltake TR100 Mini ITX case targets portable, smaller form factor PC building while maintaining compatibility for relatively large components. Learn more at the link in the description below. Roman, let's start with the Wireview.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
So we have the Wireview Pro 2.
Yeah.
Thanks to NVIDIA.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving us unlimited business ideas. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
So we made Wireview originally because Elmore had his PMD for power tracking, and I thought it would be cool to have something like this in the system. That's how it started. And then NVIDIA came up with this brilliant connector, and then things started to melt.
I thought you hated the connector.
No, it's a nice connector.
Oh, okay, yeah. You got per pin current, this is maybe voltage, or what is this display? Okay.
Or we could configure it to like power as well. This is like really early prototyping stage.
So the thing I want to point out right away, we've been talking about this stuff already, but basically this, if you don't know the Wireview, it sits between the GPU and the power cable from the power supply, and it can track the power. But the interesting thing now is you're also doing data logging. Yeah. So you said around 3 months of data?
Yeah, we didn't set the interval yet, but we're thinking about maybe like 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds it would store the current, the voltage, the temperature, so everything that the device is tracking into the storage of it. Because, you know, we're getting closer to figure out why it sucks so much, the connector. Yeah. But it's a lot of guessing.
Where's the temperature polling?
There are multiple. So you have temperature sensors on the connectors, and then you have additional ones on the bottom. 2 you can plug in, and you could hook up to, I don't know, your backplate or air temperature inside your system, like 10K NTC temperature sensors.
Got it. So for the logging, I mean, the value of that to me would be the overtime change for current or for voltage, I guess. So like if you start seeing a creep up in current, or maybe it could point you towards a resistance issue or something. Are there any other, what are all the benefits of the logging? I mean, is that the primary
the thing is, you know, obviously we hope that with per pin sensing that we would figure out, or the customer would figure out something is wrong before it fails. But we don't really know if that's the case. There could still be that the current is maybe a bit higher, but there could be just a point of contact resistance that is a bit higher and then causes more heat, whatever. We don't know, it's just speculation. But what we're hoping to figure out is that if it fails, then we can read out what's going on and then maybe draw a conclusion from there.
Is this unfailable?
No, for sure not.
Okay, so let's get into that. So this is one of the things where, one of the problems we had with some of the marketing claims that some cable companies were making previously in the early days of 12-volt high power was related to the reliability. Yeah. Where my feeling on the connector at this point, after we did the research piece a while ago, is that I personally would, if I were a manufacturer, I would not ever feel comfortable saying this will not fail if it has the connector on it.
The question is how fast does it fail?
And how many, right? Yeah. So do you have any numbers from like prior Wireviews?
So I checked that for the Wireviews that we sold so far that use 12-volt high power connectors on the GPU side. So we have multiple different versions. Also, for example, one that has triple 8-pin input and then a single 12-volt high power output, like an adapter. And from when we started selling it, it's about 3,700 units.
Okay.
And we had 12 confirmed cases of melted connectors.
I can't do that math in my head that quickly.
So that's about 0.3%.
Okay. The fan, it looks like, what is it, a 40 mil? Or what is it, or small?
It's a 30 millimeter.
30 millimeter.
Yeah.
So just a 30 millimeter fan, you're pulling in through the top, I guess.
Yeah.
There's some cutouts here. And what primarily is this cooling? Is it just the connector?
So it's blowing directly on the back of the connector, but it's also dissipating heat from the PCB and from the case itself, because we have, through all the circuitry that's on it, the shunt resistors, and you have 2 connectors, so you have 24 points of contact resistance.
Yeah.
So that can easily add up to, I don't know, 5 to 10 watts of heat.
Okay.
And the fan would help
Get
just
it out of the
dissipating
case.
that heat, even if it's like the normal operating state. Especially if you use this on a water block and you have like no airflow inside your system, 5 to 10 watts on such a small surface, that it would heat it up quite a lot.
Okay.
And that's what we already experience on the current wire views with let's say a 5090.
Yeah.
So we had to account for that, and we're obviously hoping that if there is a current imbalance, then maybe the fan can help a little bit to mitigate the risk of it immediately failing.
What about fail safes? So because
that's also interesting. Yeah.
So what's the story with those?
There's a small 2-pin connector in the bottom right here, and so like right here next to the USB-C. And this 2-pin connector, you would get a Y splitter cable, and you can hook this up to the mainboard power button.
Okay.
And then we plan to define.
So basically, you plug in the switch, the button switch, and then this into the splitter, and so then whichever one's being used will just.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it could trigger the system to shut down.
I think the most valuable thing for the public would be just the data from failures. Like, really, what you need is failures. So, which is not something I would normally say to a company selling a product. But like, so here's the plan, all right? You're Der Bauer right now, you're not Thermal Grizzly. So as Der Bauer, the best thing that can happen is that you have some failures, because now I understand what he's doing now. The business strategy is clear. You've created an infinite content loop where first you sell the product, and then you can collect data from failures that presumably are not your fault and are related to the connector. Then you can use that to create videos, and then you can use that to create more products. It's brilliant. All right.
Thanks. And it's all only thanks to NVIDIA.
Thanks, Jensen. So, I'm sure he'll watch. I'm sure he's watching right now. He's just put your name and my name on a blacklist for GPU samples.
Also, you mean we can't go to the keynotes anymore?
Oh, they definitely don't want me there.
Too bad.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on this that we need to know about?
I mean, there's also a USB-C, which will hook it up to your system. You can monitor over software. You can configure stuff over the software, and
you can write to the device.
Yes,
right?
you can write to it, and there should be space to also put some images on it if you want to.
Can you just uninstall the software after?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's exactly the
That's
point.
all I want. Price, release date?
Release date, let's say probably end of the year.
You skipped the first one.
Yeah.
Price, TBD?
I guess around 100.
Okay.
Because the problem is that on this one, you might have recognized the MSI connector.
Yeah.
That we just repurposed, but we need one that is going to be longer for compatibility reasons. And so we need to make our own connector, which is really expensive and high MOQ, which means that we have to invest quite a lot of money into this.
Minimum order quantity for people. So they have to custom mold something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the lead time is quite long. That's the main part. It will take us 3 months to just get the connector.
Okay, got it. What's the impact to pricing from just a custom connector? I mean, how much does that really move? Versus, because there's a lot going on here, like PCB and everything else. So how much is the connector contributing?
I think it's aside from the case, it's the most expensive single part.
Okay.
Yeah, because the rest, even the ICs on there are not that expensive, but the custom connector, the connector itself is not expensive, but if you take the mold into account, which is several 10,000 euros, then it quickly adds up.
Right.
Yeah.
Last two things. So did you say it was 32 megabytes? of storage?
It's either going to be 16 or 32 megabyte.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the case, you could make it at Thermal Grizzly at the factory we went to. Do you think you will?
Yeah, we will probably make the initial batch, but I'm afraid that we might not have the capacity
to keep up.
So if we make, I don't know, maybe 2,000 units initially, we might not be fast enough.
Right.
So we might outsource the part of it.
Yeah. All right, let's do this one.
Yeah.
So their bench table, we saw this when I visited the factory.
Yep.
You said you wanted to make this for you, and then if people want to buy it, I guess cool.
So
why did you want it?
For years, if you check on my channel, my bench table is an empty PCB with a couple of standoffs on it, because I never found bench tables useful. Just big and like, I don't know. I never found it useful.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I was thinking about why did I not use an actual PCB that can contribute something to it.
Right.
So I was brainstorming with Elmore, and then he said it's an amazing idea to add RGB underneath.
Okay, got it.
So he was really happy about that part.
Yeah.
And then we were thinking about what could we actually make useful.
So is this just a giant diffuser around the edge here? Okay.
So, yeah, that's also how it kind of evolved. So we originally just wanted to make the PCB and standoffs, and that's it.
We should probably take a step back too, and what does it actually do for people?
All right.
So I mean, obviously you put the motherboard on top of the standoffs here.
Yep.
These just unscrew and then hold it, like secure the board. So it's a test platform.
Yep.
But you've got a bunch of stuff coming out of it. So walk me through the different types of connections.
Yeah, so we call it like an active bench table. So we have different zones and different purposes. The main purpose for me is this connector, which is just internal USB connection to the motherboard above. So you would have a wire that goes directly onto the motherboard. And this connects the USB connectors right here. So the 2.0 for two here
connectors,
and two on here. So for me personally, that's just where I would hook up like keyboard and mouse, for example. And then also 4 micro SD cards. Micro SD because mainly it's extremely cheap. So you can get like 64 gigabyte for €5. Yeah. And then I would have one where you have like your Windows image and like BIOS and drivers and all that. And I would, I plug it in, I immediately have everything I need every single time I'm swapping the platform. So that's the main point.
So I think, I working in a basically lab environment, I understand why for this stuff. I think the immediate question if I'm a viewer is like, why would I plug a keyboard and mouse into this when I can plug the keyboard and mouse into basically the back of the I/O, right, for the motherboard? The answer I come to is because I'm changing the board constantly. Okay.
Yeah, because you know how it is with testing. Sometimes you get a new, I don't know, CPU, GPU review, and you have to swap 5 times a day the different motherboard. Right. Then all I have to swap is this.
Cool. Yeah.
And I'm lazy,
Yeah, sure.
So.
And then, do you actually personally pull from like this as opposed to network attached storage or something? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Currently, I'm just using different USB sticks.
Yeah.
And then I found this is just...
What a pain in the ass. Okay. Yeah. I see why you did this. There are other ways, just so you know. I see why you can pixie boot. But I understand, though. Yeah. How about what's going on over here?
Yeah, so you can also add 2 SATA SSDs.
Yeah.
But you would just traditionally have to plug them over SATA cable into your motherboard. So this is not going over USB, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
But at least that's why I wanted to have it. So if I have my Steam game library on there, which is like now I don't know like over a terabyte of all the games, then I just have a SATA SSD on here, which its main reason is because it's cheap. Yeah. And that's why I would have this on here, and then everything always present.
How about the switches? There's a couple switches on here. So what do those do?
So we have different zones. So we have 3 fan and 1 pump zone. Okay. And each one is fused off. So you always see the tiny fuse. You can either choose from 100% fan speed, 50%, or EXT, which is external. And the external mode draws from the external fan connector. So you could plug this into your CPU connector on the motherboard, right? And then everything that would be set to EXT would be connected to this.
Got it.
Same thing for the pump zone, except for the pump having like less connectors but it's also 3 amps.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have basically here have 3 amps for this zone, while you also have 3 amps for the pump zone.
Right.
There's probing points. So either you could use it for probing, but I personally want to use it as a power supply. So if I have any external device I want to hook up to my PSU, then I can just solder wires to it. And yeah, you power everything through one 6-pin. And this also gives power to those 2 USB Type-Cs, which you can use for charging, for example. Or I have, for example, I have a thermometer I'm using for tracking my water temperature.
Yeah.
And that one is powered over USB-C. That's why I needed this.
Okay.
And
cool.
that's why it was
added.
What's
price and release date?
It's going to be about 200 euros. But it's not only this. It's in the end, it also comes with a bunch of other aluminium parts.
So you don't like test bench platforms because they're big and they get kind of in the way.
Yeah.
So you made this, which is small. And then you made these, which bolt to it and turn it into a test bench platform that's big and in the way.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, it's modular, so I will use it like this.
So this is you doing the people a favor. But if it were up to you, you would only use it like that.
No, this is me as the Bauer, and this is Thermal Grizzly. You know, it's like me doing something, and then somebody said, but we actually have to sell it probably.
Right.
So we added this part. Yeah.
Got it. That's okay. I think I understand. Cool. So then, before we jump over to the block detail with Joe, can you just the highlights, like what's hooked up here that's new from you guys, and then we'll jump over to Joe for explanation.
We have our beautiful Astral water block for 5090 Astral, obviously, and then we are showcasing our new CPU block.
Let's we'll do a quick cut and get into the water block detail. All right, so now I am joined by Joe Robey from Thermal Grizzly these days.
Yep.
So we've talked before. You were at a different company at the time, and now you're doing engineering for Thermal Grizzly. We were talking a little bit about manufacturing difficulties, things like that. So what is special about how this is made?
Yeah, so it's a huge process actually. It's first machined from one side, and they're machined in a block of 4, and then from being together in 4, the whole plate's flipped, and it's located by the offcuts when it goes back down, and the opposite side's machined.
Okay.
So then we get what is essentially a blank part, and everything has a machine finish on. We glass blast the entire thing, but that also means we would glass blast all of the contact patches, which people want to be a perfect mirror finish.
Right.
So then it goes back onto a machine and they all get faced off. So then we have a flawless finish with no machining marks on all of the non-contact areas and the contact patches.
So basically on the back side, after you blast this, so it is you're not like masking these off, it's hitting the contact patches?
Yeah, so these would be left higher, like 0.2 millimeters higher.
Yeah.
And they get blasted, and then these get mounted piece by piece, and they get faced off.
Okay.
And all the inside stuff gets cut.
Cool.
And then machined again, because we need to put it up on its end and make the parts for the terminal.
Okay. So it gets flipped 3 times in the
Yeah, like 3 setups, and the first 2 there is a plate of 4 pieces.
So what's the manufacturing time like on something like that?
For all of those steps altogether is about 2 hours.
Is that just for this piece, basically?
Yeah, just for the one piece of the block.
Counting the
not counting that, and that also has 4 setups.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about, I mean, like, can you give me some appreciation for what the time really means, I guess? Because if you were going to make a really simple, cheap, or cheaper, relatively speaking, block, that's kind of like, as you know, like this will do the job, basic.
Yeah.
What's the time on something like that look like?
I mean, we could make compromises to a point that people wouldn't be happy with the product.
Right, that's what I'm going for.
But it would still be a valid piece of engineering. You could just have an aluminium heatsink for all the VRM and the VRAM.
Yeah.
It's not a big heat density, and you could get away with having this as the only copper part, this big.
Yeah.
You know, and the cost of this is a fraction of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. What is the real cost or the challenge come from with this? Because we were talking about like the microfin spacing.
Yeah.
And so I guess first background information. What's the spacing on these?
So this is 0.2, 0.2.
Okay.
So the slot is 0.2, and the fin that's left behind is 0.2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, as you push them closer together, what are some of the challenges you run into?
So just being able to saw it is a challenge because every time you bring the saw in, it tries to bend the others away.
Yeah.
And as they become thinner, they become weaker, the tool becomes weaker, and everything becomes very difficult. And
yields go down, I guess.
Yeah, yield goes down, but the tool wear increases exponentially.
Okay.
The price of the tool also increases exponentially.
Because you're replacing it? Or because it's a special tool?
Both. I mean, to get a tool made that thin, and they also have problems even just shipping the tool because it's so thin.
Okay, cool. That's pretty cool. So going back to like product level, I mean, is there anything special in terms of thermal design, cooling, flow, anything like that you want to go over?
So the main thing we'll try to do when we make the coolant path is to occupy as much of the space as possible. Even though we have the O-ring between everything to seal off the dead areas where there's no flow,
right.
We still want to reduce the dead area, so visually there's a lot of coolant and it looks really neat. But if it would be all square, there'd be lots of places for air to get trapped. And it doesn't look good, it can lead to problems with the plating if there's air inside, and it hurts performance a lot. So it's just coming up with something to get as much coolant through as you can,
right.
and keeping the air out and not letting it accumulate in the block.
Do you happen to know what the price is going to be yet?
For the GPU,
the whole block,
for the GPU block, the whole thing is going to be 500 euros.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how about, we didn't talk about this at all yet, so this comes with it, right?
Yeah.
So what's the deal with this?
So it started as a piece of packaging because we wanted to ship the block assembled with the backplate on the block, and if you would just screw it together without the card in there, then you bend all the backplate.
Yeah.
And the best thing to put in would be a PCB. So we're like, okay,
just do a PCB.
We could probably get a PCB. And then the first thing was like, oh, we can print the instructions on it to an extent.
And the credits.
And the credits. So
can we just get a close-up on, so I don't know how many people in our audience know this. I think Roman's audience is pretty familiar, but there's actually someone behind the curtain.
Yes.
And
the overlords of Thermal Grizzly.
Right, the supervisors. And we'll leave you to go to Roman's channel if you want some of that.
Yeah, so when me and Roman disagree,
yeah,
it's settled by Shikamatita.
Well, but what if they disagree? There's only two. You need a third one for a tiebreaker.
They've always had a consensus so far.
Okay. How about, so one of the last things you guys mentioned to me with this is being able to put all the screws back in place for the air cooler.
Yeah. So like after we decided, okay, we'll have a board, then I was like, we can add a gold finger to it, and then you can actually just take the block out of the box and install it, so you can use it to build your whole loop without having a graphics card and without spending an hour or two to assemble it.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, you can put this back in your air cooler and keep all the screws together and
organized.
Put a cooler in an old motherboard or something.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
The one thing that jumped out to me was the glass, using actual glass.
Yep.
What else on here do you want to cover?
So it's a very similar construction to the GPU block, where we have one absolutely huge piece, and you can see on this one it's not plated, it's a big brass piece.
Yeah.
And that brass body has all of the threads in it, so it's pretty indestructible. And the flow routing and the way the jet plate's constructed is that it's integrated into that brass piece. So there's less parts than usual, and it perfectly matches what we did with this piece.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Last thing I'll throw out there is so on the fittings, is there anything particularly unique you want to talk about for the design?
Well, particularly uniquely, you can assemble them into a giant cube.
What can I, if as a consumer, if I wanted to replicate this, how many fittings do I have to buy?
Well, 27.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much does this cube cost retail? 27 times.
27 times about 12 if you used all the rotaries to make it. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So a couple $100.
Yeah. $300-400 cube. Yeah.
Do you can you please make this and actually have it function to where it routes the water around in some way? And can you do 3D water routing?
3D water routing and Rubik's Cube. Yeah,
and Rubik's Cube. It needs to spin at the same time.
Okay, so the objective is to get all the coolant through the whole thing and out the other side.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try.
Okay. That is Computex 2026. You heard it here first. I am spending all of Roman's money, but I'm making Joe's job a lot more fun. So, Joe, thank you for joining. And Roman, thank you as well. And we will see you all next time.